So let's go back to the presentation. So I've kind of got my UI, right? Kind of got my UI. I've added my windows and existing forms. So now I'm at step 3. That's what I just did. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. Now, and step 4. We've kind of done add buttons and controls. But one thing we didn't do is we really haven't done any kind of coding. So. Before, and this is in the past I'm talking about, when we were using forms, here's my main form. If I want to go to my next form, I'm going to use my next button, no? So let's double click, right? So I'm going to write my next button click thing. And if you notice, I'm going to put in some kind of, normally I would instantiate it right here. I would instantiate my new form and stuff in my next button. What's the problem with that if I instantiate it right here? Yes? Kind of. You do, but I'm saying where I'm doing it is you have to do it anyway. You have to instantiate the next form, okay, somewhere. Because otherwise your current form knows nothing about the next one. Yes?
Well, I don't know, maybe I do it weird, but I create the form at the form's load, and then because if you're doing setters and stuff like that, then I can set it later with that.
Not a bad solution. You can also do it like our friend in the back did it for his exam. We talked about this as well. He did it inside the program.cs file, right? You can do it there too. I'm going to show you just another way of doing it, by the way. And my recommendation to you is to make it easy for you for this course, right, is do it at class level, all right? Do it at class level. So all you're doing really is you're saying, I know my whole class knows about this form, which is nothing wrong with that, actually. That's right. Because your class should know if you're going to hide and show and all that kind of stuff. It's not just from the next button. Maybe I need to do it somewhere else. So you need to know it somewhere global, like we're talking about, in different places, other than just this next button, okay? Because next button, the scope is too small for us to know about the next form, okay? So we should do it at the top of our application, which is right here, right? So, or some of these other places I mentioned. And there's other ways, again, as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is do some kind of documentation, right? Like declare form information, I don't know. Right, and here I want to make it public, all right? So I want to make it accessible to other forms because I want my forms and all of my forms that I reference here to be accessible to other parts of my application. So I'm going to call it public, and this time I'm going to kind of name it as next form, right? Because that's the kind of form. I've already kind of described the UI, so my application knows about next form. It knows about it, right? Here's my next form, and then I'm going to call it my next form, right? Or whatever I want to call it, next form or and then I want to kind of equal to new object, right? And it's going to be called next form, just like we did before, and with a proper syntax. So now my application at class level, right? It understands I have a next form. I've instantiated it, but I haven't shown it yet. Okay, right at the beginning when my application loads, right? Number 1, when this form loads. When the form is created, actually. When my form is instantiated, it knows all the other form that's down the line. Now, could I instantiate all my forms this way? Yes, the answer is yes, I could. But the challenge is, if I instantiate all my forms this way, then my main form, my base form, knows all my other forms, but my other forms don't know about my other forms, right? So it's kind of like a catch-22, and we'll talk about why I wouldn't recommend that. Okay, so if that's true, and we know this is the right thing to do, this format. I'm a lazy guy, right? So here we go again. I'm going to copy this information. I'm going to go to my next form. I'm going to double-click on my next button because eventually I'm going to have to code that as well. There's other ways of doing that as well. I can go to F7, right? And I'm going to just kind of declare another form. But instead of next form, now I'm going to say last form, right? Because that's really the form that I want to instantiate now, right? Last form. So here's my last form. So now each form knows about the next form, right? But now we need to know about the previous form, right? Because that's a great way. We really want to pass our information from one form to the other by reference. And the way to do that instead, and I'll do that, and again, I'll go to next form, okay? So here's my next form code, and I'll save everything just to be clear. In here, what I might recommend you to do is this. In next form. Not in the main form, public, and then you want to call something form as an object, right? It's a standard form, almost like the base form class that I'm asking for. And we're going to call this previous form, right? Yes? Call it whatever you like. Parent form, previous form. No, it's bad. Yeah, no, be careful with that, because parent form will give you the wrong thing. And I've looked at this extensively to make sure it's as easy as pie for you guys. Yes?
Wouldn't we be able to give a return type to our forms?
A return type?
Yeah.
Yes, there's ways of doing it. There's lots of different ways, okay? I'm not saying this is the only way. I'm telling you this is the easiest way to do it, okay? So I've created this public form. It's called previous form, but it has no substance. I haven't instantiated anything yet. Why? Because I don't need to instantiate my previous form. It's already been instantiated. All I need is a reference to this thing. So now I've done this. I'm also going to put the same exact name in my last form, right? Because I need both my first name and my first form and my last form to work the same way. So here's my last form. And here, again, I'm going to kind of declare form information here at the top of my app, and I'm going to right-click. Control V for paste. So here's my previous form, but it doesn't really do anything right now. It's just a base form class with a name. Nothing instantiated. Nothing has been created. I haven't used the teleporter yet, okay? And I don't want to use the teleporter. I'll tell you why. So if we go back to main form, here's my main form now, right? What I want to do is I want to say somewhere in my main form, I want to pass my reference to my new form, my next form, downstream, right? And where I probably want to do it is here, in my next button click. Now, there's different places you can do it. My recommendation is here. So I would kind of do something like this, right? My next form, which I know what it is, right? It's already instantiated, dot. Right, I made it public, so I know I can access it. Previous form, here it is, right, is equal to this. Make sense? So I'm saying this is pointing to my object, this object, which is my main form, right? I'm taking this, a pointer to this object, and passing it by reference to this other form, right? So I'm saying, hey, throw this by reference to this form, okay? I know this is going to be the same thing. So basically what I'm saying is, here's my code, my documentation, my comments. Pass a reference to this form, to the downstream form, or next form. Yes. So I would do this, right? And by the way, you can pass references back too, but you don't need to. And again, I would do here at the next button. Here's my next. Right? So I'm going to the next button. I'm going to, instead of my next form is also going to be last form. So this works here too, right? Because this my next form is different than the previous my next form because it's pointing to my next form here in this particular form. In next form is actually last form, right? I haven't changed the code. All I've changed is the names, right? So I've kind of created a reference to the next one and the next one down the line, okay? This is not the only way to do this. I'll rephrase. Again, you can do this better in object-oriented programming. We're going to talk about that a different way, actually. You can do this, again, with program.cs. You can do this in many ways. This is the easiest way to do it and make it work flawlessly. Okay. So we've done this. This is good. Now, in my last form, I want to go back, right? And I have a reference to previous form, right? For example, here it is in my next form. Previous form is equal to this, right? So therefore, now I'm going to start counting backwards from here. So go back to my previous form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this. So go back to previous form. How do I do that? Well, I know that previous form has already been defined and instantiated. I've already got a reference to it. So I go previous form dot show, right? Because I can do that now. And then this form dot hide, right? So I want to hide this one if I'm going back. Make sense? Previous form dot show. All I'm doing, I'm not instantiating the other form. It's already there, and I know about it now because I've passed a reference to this form down its previous form. All I got to do is now show the previous form. Okay. So I'll grab all this, Control, I go back to my next form, and when I go to my, here we are, my back button is where I want it to go, and here it is, go back to previous form. All right. In my next button, in next form, I also want to show, kind of hide this one, right, and show my next one, right? So let's kind of go down here a couple of lines, and I want to say kind of my next form dot show, right? I want to do that, and this dot hide. Okay, so I need those lines too. So this is just some comments here. Oops. Show next form. Oh yeah. Show next form. Ignoring that. And hide this form. Kind of simple, comments. Okay, so grab this, copy. As an example, here's my next form. I want to go back to main form. Here it is. And in my next button click, I want to put that in there too, right? Because that makes sense. So I'm kind of, to answer the question that we said, I'm kind of using the same code, right? Because the same kind of code over and over again. There's different ways I can save time and recode this, by the way, if I was going to use visual inheritance, which we'll talk about later on, like I said. So you don't have to do all this kind of stuff, okay? Because all this stuff we're talking about should be part of a template, a form template that you create for yourself, and then you inherit, right? That's the better way to do it when we use object-oriented programming. Right now, though, kind of ahead of ourselves, we're not going to do that. Okay, so we'll save everything. Okay, I think now's a good time for a test, right? Because I think we said it, blah, 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 whatever. We haven't passed any information yet. We're just creating the flow forwards and back. And this is where I would do my first upload to Git. Hey, I've got to the point where this is a pretty good milestone now. I've got my forms created. I've got my flow back and forth. Git, right? This is the time to do it. And I'm probably going to close some of this stuff down just to make it easier for me to see because I'm getting all a little flustered here with all these things open. All right, so let's start off. And we can test if I missed anything. Okay, here's my age. I'm going to answer a number. I'm going to actually enter some characters because there's no validation right now, right? Next. Okay, well, let's move it around. Okay, there's no form there. I'll put in some other gobbledygook in here because I'm not testing for anything. Even put some characters in there. Next. Okay, oh, that's bad. I forgot. I should have put that in here, so I got to make that change, right? And this is information here, but these are text boxes, and I'm able to type in them, and that's bad, right? So that I have to make those changes to my controls, right? So what have I done? I've taken a look. I've kind of run through a test of my first module, if you will, right? Why am I going through this with you guys? Because some of you need it. Some of you need a little bit of process flow or workflow, and I've been asked to do this by some of you through email, so I'm showing it to you now. Okay, please forgive me. I don't mean to. I'm not trying to dumb it down too much for you guys. I respect you highly. All right. Let's stop that and make those modifications. So I know that I have to make some modifications to my last form. So I know that I want to make these all grayed out. If I disable these, the problem is that they also change the way things run, right? I could do it. I'll show you what there's going to be another problem generated by this, but I'll do it anyway. So here's false. So now they're all disabled, okay? And also I know that I need to put my center screen or my start position to center screen. Okay, let's just run it again to make sure that all works. So again, here we go. I'm not even putting anything in there now, no validation. I'm going forward, and yes, they're disabled, but I don't like the disabled look. Yes? Could do that. That's actually a very good choice as well. I like your idea. Let's go back and do that. Read-only is different than disabled. Disabled actually grays them out, right? That's the effect it'll give you. Read-only just doesn't allow you to type in there at all, right? Actually, it might allow you to type in there. It just won't allow you to change anything, right? So I could do that. I could restyle it too. Like I could kind of say, well, if it's read-only, I could explicitly say, just to make it look different, right? So I could kind of, highlight these three controls. There's the other way I can do it. But I like the read-only, but I can change the border style. I like fixed 3D, but the back color, instead of the window color, I think I can specify kind of a lighter color, right? Control light, let's say. And then what that will do when I read only, and again, I'll just run it again and go back down the forms next, it makes them kind of visible. So it looks like, you know, you can't type in there. They're disabled, but I mean, at least it looks a little lighter. Okay. A couple other things. I got to fix my exit button now, right? Because my exit button doesn't do anything, right? So let's go to my exit button. And I'm going to use, instead of this dot close, which does not make sense in my context that I'm using it, I'm going to use, no, application dot exit. Terminate the app, so it's application dot exit. Oops, not exit, exit. Not that one either. Application dot exit. So that'll kill it. But I have a problem. Yeah. We're going to deal with it right now, right? So I have a problem with my close button, right? What happens when I click my close button? What really happens, though? There's a bunch of stuff that goes on, right? Yes.
Well, I mean, well, like you were saying, I mean, like it goes through like you talked before, but you have your closing and the close function.
Yeah.
So while it's closing, it's doing all its ending of anything related to that form, but all of the forms you would have hidden are still running.
Right. So at the form closing is the right place when the user clicks the cancel button. The form closing event is the perfect event to listen for, to modify, because it's an event to listen for the form. Yeah?
I do have a question about that. Is it better to put it at closing or closed?
Close is closed, right? It we'll never get there.
When I tested it, it did execute at closed.
Yeah, be careful, though, because it doesn't always do that. So I want to do it so it's foolproof, right?
Yeah.
Not, because sometimes you won't get that.
Because I'm like, well, which one should I get?
Form closing is the right place. So going back to last form, right, as an example, when I click my exit button, my X here, I want to, it's gonna start the form closing, event, right? So if I double click on the form, it's one thing, but if I go to this little events log here, I want just the form closing one, not my load event. So here's form closing. Here it is. Double click, right? Form closing, and in there, I'm going to put in a reference. I don't want to rewrite this, and again, I could have other stuff in exit button.click. So I'm going to make a reference to exit button.click. I'm going to call exit button.click. Right, here it is. And I'm going to pass in the sender and the event argument. And again, the reason why I do this is because I might have other things in exit button.click that I want to use. Right? That's one way of doing it. I could do this. Right? The other thing I could do is just point to exit button.click, which is actually the better way. Right? So, whoop, I kill this again. Right? Because I don't care about that. I go back to last form, and where I do my form closing, right, I can choose another option here. And again, it's not showing me exit button.click, but that would be the place where I would want to do it. Or I can create my own custom one.
I looked at that, and it was variation in, form close versus event arc.
Yeah.
Different.
It's totally different, yeah.
I don't know, will you let you just send it, or?
It'll let me.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, terminate the app. It's kind of the same, and I'm gonna call exit button.click, right? And I go sender, and then E.
Okay, so it won't throw up an error because it's a different object.
No. We'll show you in a second. So see, there's E. Form closing event arc, same thing. It's just an event arc. So what I'm actually saying is, when I click my exit button, I want to kind of go to my exit, right? And this is going to be different in the other forms because I don't have an exit button in my other forms. Right? So I'm going to have to kind of do it a little differently in the other ones. So let's run it. So I go da-da-da. Here it is, next, and I click X, and it closes my app. Okay, that's good. That runs well. Okay. Now I need to kind of do the same thing in my next form. I don't care about main form, because if I click X on my main form, it'll close. Right? So next form, away I go. Here it is. Yep.
Except for your main form, you have a previous ability to go back, right? Which means that you would have created that, gone back to that. That's not hidden when you close the close form. It will still keep the forward one. No, it will everything.
If I use application.exit, no.
Oh, because it's underneath that one, right? Because it's got the class in it, right?
Yeah. Right. It would work. Don't worry. Trust me.
I don't know. I don't like trust.
I know. That's good, actually. I like the fact you don't like trust. That's good. But here's where we're going to do it. Terminate the app.
I couldn't get the back or sorry, the exit button working either, like listening to predefined terminal. Is it just because it's a form?
Which one are you talking about?
You know how you would match the
Yeah, you can't do it. Yeah, it's a form. So it's a different kind of app. But you can you can write your own. If you write your own event handler, then it'll work. Okay, so this is fine. So now this works. Let's run it again. Test these little things, right? So here, age, next, close, closed, right? So now all my X's on every form work, right? I have control of all my X's. This is a good thing, right? Because otherwise you're going to get some weird effects. So now again, this would be another step where I would GitHub. Here we go, another one because I made another change, right? Okay. So last form, blah, blah, blah. Let's kill this one for a second, and this one. And so we have a couple of things that we're flowing through, but we haven't tested the back button yet. Let's test that back button and make sure it works. All right, so next, back. Is there another form there? Ooh, no. Next, back, back. It all works. So the back buttons all work now. But to really test that out, we should see that the data is the same, right? So now we come to the data portion of our forms, right? And remember what I told you. There's a bunch of strategies for doing this. One, pass the ball, right? Which means take your data from form 1 and go to pass to form 2, and then pass that other data to form 3, and so on. That's not a bad way to do it. So, but what I need is to create a setter, a set accessor method for each of my downstream forms that include the data. Or, option 2, I could pass the data into some kind of class, which is the better way to do it, structure, array, blah, blah, and then that would be, especially if you have a lot of data you're passing from one form to the other, that would make it a lot easier. For now, though, we only have a simple data, so we're going to go with one at a time. Okay, so we're going to kill this one. We're going to go into our next form. Right, here's our next form. We're going to actually go into the code for it. Here we go. And what I need to do is right here at the top, I've got to create a couple of things. A private variable to hold my data, right? Which I'm going to call it my age. Okay, because that's the data that I'm holding. And it's going to be, of course, an integer, right? Because I want an integer to be passed, not text. Okay, so maybe somewhere down the line, and I'll do this. I'm doing this on purpose, by the way. I could make it text because, hey, we don't care. But I want to be able to test that it's actually a number, not text. So that's why it's good to make it an integer. So that's the first thing, a private, right? Then, down here, public, I'm going to define an integer again, right? And this time I'm going to make it something user-friendly called age, right? And inside my code block, I'm going to put the set method as an example, set. And I'm going to use another inside here, another little code block. That's how it looks, right? And I'm going to basically put in the private variable, my age, right, is equal to value, right? So what am I doing here? Yeah. It's a write only, right? It's a write only. There's no read only. It's only write. You're not reading from the property. You can't read from this property. All you do is write to it. So one way. I'm writing. I'm pushing the data down one way. I'm storing it in a local variable, in a class level variable called my age, which is private. It's encapsulated in my class, so it's not accessible to the outside world, outside of my class, right? And I'm throwing the data down into there, and whatever data I use with the set accessor methodology, they're going to see on the outside age as a friendly name, not my age, right? We'll see how that works in a second. So I like this. I might as well do this now. I might as well do this for my last form as well. So here's my last form. I know I'm going to need a couple more pieces of information. I'm going to need that one, right? So here's next form. By the way, you see that there's duplication going on right here, right? Because I'm duplicating all this again. Is there a better way to do this? Absolutely, right? But we're not going to do it the better way right now. We're going to do it the easy way that makes sense to everybody, because I want to make sure that no one has an issue doing this later on. So here's last form, right? And I'm going to give myself some space, and right-click and paste. Right-click and paste, and I've got my age. This is my. Actually, I should have done this earlier. I didn't do that. Here's declare, class level variables, right? And over here, what I want to do is, declare accessor methods, right? Here's our accessor method. So age is already there because we kind of got this already from the previous one. But I got to add a couple more. I got to add first name and last name, right? So I got to kind of put that into my private variables here. So I'm going to go private string my first name, right? Private string my last name, right? So I want to kind of pass that in. And then I'm going to create these two accessors as well, right? So public, here's the public side. What they're going to look like to the public is a string, and then my accessor is going to be called first name, right? Here's my first name. And yes, there's different ways of copying and pasting. I'm just being more explicit this way. Oops. All right. And set. Any questions around this? What I'm doing? My first name equals to value. Oops. And I'm going to copy this thing now just because I'm a little lazy. Because now it's almost exactly the same except for last instead of first. And instead of first name, we'll go last name. And here we go again. So last name is equal to value. So I've got my first name, my last name, and my age. All these are going to go into, right, these private variables. Okay, so I want those private variables, right, to go into my form variables. So then, when do I do it? I do it when the form is activated. Every time the form is activated, I want these private variables to send information into my form over and over again. Why? Anybody? The back button. Every time I might change my data, right? So if I do it in the wrong place, like unload, my data will never change because it's only going to happen once. The next time I go back, I might change some stuff and go back, same data. I'm like, wait, why is my data the same? Because I'm not doing things again. There's no event that I'm listening to change my data. I'm not sending it to the form. I got to send it somehow again to the form. So to plan it properly, it's got to be done on on activate. So knowing that, let's save everything and go back to my last form and click on the form itself. Go to the event button here and go to my activate listener. Right here it is, my activated. Double click. In here is where I'm going to start typing my stuff. So I know that age label, right, or age text box, right? Here's my age text box. Here it is. Age text box dot text. The text, it's a string, is equal to my age, right? It's my age, but the problem is I have to make it into a string, so I got to go to string, right? There it is. That's the first thing I got to do. And the next one is first name text box dot text. The next one is kind of easier, is equal to my first name and last name text box. Give me an error. We'll see why. Oh, there it is. Text box, last name text box dot text is equal to my last name. Okay, so we've kind of got those going on, right? So it's going to happen on activated. So pass data to the controls. Okay. Again, you want some kind of comment here to see what I'm doing, right? So I'm passing my data to my controls. My last controls will get that. So this is kind of the same thing, right? That's kind of the same thing for everything else. So I'm going to do the same thing in my other activated one. So I'm going to only do it for age because I don't have first name and last name in next form yet, right? So I'm going to go to next form. Here it is. Actually, I'll go here. I'll establish my listener, which is activated. Here it is. And in here, I'll right copy and paste. Right? Because what I'm getting is, actually this is wrong. What I'm getting is, I don't care about passing information. I'm not passing my age text box in here, so I don't need to do this, right? So just undo it. This is wrong. I don't need it. I don't need it at all because I don't know if there's no next age text box in my next form. Meh. So that was a mistake. Forgive me, guys. So I can just get rid of this. And by the way, to get rid of it, please don't erase it from your code. Do it here. If you actually delete this, then it actually deletes the related procedure here method. Okay. So kind of we have data flow right now. Let's check it though. So we've saved everything. We start things off, right? And here's my age. I'm going to put some gobbledygook in here, and it's going to fail. So maybe I'll put an age like I'm 23, right? Next. It's not true. Tom and my last name. Next. And hey, I'm not getting my data. Why not?
I don't think you pass along the first and last name, but I think you only put the same.
Correct. So if I go exit and I go back to my next form, here's my next form. On my next button, click is where I have to pass my data, right? That's where it goes. I have to pass it in there into the form on my next form. Same thing with my first form, my main form. Here's my main form, right? And if I want to go to code view, when I click the next button, right, I've got to pass my data along before I show my forms. So here's pass my data, pass age data to next form. So I got to say my next form dot age, here's where I set my accessor, right, is equal to my age. If I've done it properly, right, I've got a my age text box, right, dot text. But the problem with that is that it's not the proper thing. My age is actually an integer, and age text box is a string, so I've got to do an integer dot parse, right, with this thing in order for it to work, right? So here's my integer dot parse. Now I'm sending my data. So this is my first data sent down the line, right? That's first. Now I got to do the same kind of thing. Here's my data into my next form. So here's my next form, right? As an example, here's my next button, and just make some room here and Control V, right? Because I'm still going to do this, but I don't have to parse it anymore because my age data is already an integer. So I'm not passing this. I'm passing my age, right? Because that's the one I'm passing on. My next form dot first name is equal to first name text box dot text, right? And my next form dot last name is equal to last name text box dot text. Because they're all strings, it's all good, right? And instead of passing age data, pass age, first name, and last name data. All right, so done it all. Let's check it out now, make sure that it works. Again, we'll do another run. 23. Okay, we'll go Tom. We're in here now. Next, and hello. Now, it doesn't quite look like I like it, and this is where we have to style it again, because like, you know, our man in the red shirt said in the back, right? It doesn't look good, right? Looks like it's grayed out. It kind of works, but not really. We're still missing a couple of controls. I might as well control them now. File. I already made a kind of a print screen, so I got to do that, and I got to do my exit button here, right? So let's do that next. Here, at this point, will be another milestone, by the way, because I've made it go, and I've sent data down, and it works going down one way, all right? So before I check it, before I actually do my next piece, I'm going to check it going the other way. So here's 23, next, and I'll say John Smith this time, right? Next. Here's John Smith back. Okay, instead of John Smith, I'll change the name to Tom Smith. Next. Tom Smith. Back. I'm going to change my age to 45. Next. 45. So all that data flow is working both ways now. I've got it working from one form to the other to the third one, right? And I'm doing it on form activated, right? Nice and easy. Okay, I know this is tedious, guys. Bear with me. Bear with me. Because if we don't do this properly, someone's going to miss out. Okay, here's my last form. I forgot to add a couple things. Let's do the exit button, right? So I know my exit button .click is an event, right? And I've kind of got the click event. I can kind of point to my exit button. So that's one thing I want to do. Okay, and I can do the other way around, right? My print event I haven't really done yet, so I'll double click on that. And remember how we did this. It's print form1, right? Dot print action, right? Is equal to, and listen to IntelliSense in this particular case, print to preview. Remember how we did this last time, and then print form1 dot print, right? So I want to print off that form, right? So here's my printing done. Print the form. Okay, that's done. I've got my exit button. The only thing I'm missing is my about box. Got to add that in, right? So let's save everything. This would be another space where I would actually test everything, right? So up to here. 23. Next, Tom. Smith. Make it easy. And file print. It comes up, right? I don't have my help button working yet. And my exit should work now. There it goes. Okay, so my exit works. Everything works. This is a good place to save and put it up to GitHub. See where I'm doing it? Every milestone, putting up to GitHub, right? Because otherwise, you can't step back, right? You don't know what you did. Something went wrong. I'm working up to this point, right? That's automatic. That comes up. If you press equals in your IntelliSense, it'll bring up that whole system.drawing. It'll suggest that line. Take that line, right? But it actually is. It's system. I didn't put this in. IntelliSense did it for me. System.drawing.printing, .print action, and then I put in print to preview. That was my last point. Yes. Yeah. You could. Yeah, and the getter would actually, you could do it automatically instead of pushing it. You could pull it. Yeah, you could, totally. There's different ways, right? Like, yeah, if you're going to me, right, you have to make it so that where the workflow works for you. And I'm telling you, this is the easiest. If I'm giving you a template to say, this is the easiest way to do it, this works, right? You might find that doing it different ways is great, but it takes more development time. And for me, it's okay. In an exam, do something easy like this, and you're going to finish the exam. Or if you're in a crunch, this is okay. If it's easier to do your way in an exam, do it your way. Right? And again, you know what? I can't cover every different strategy. There's like different strategies, different reasons why people do things the way they do things. Right? So your strategy might be perfect for your workflow, whatever it is. Right? And as long as it works and there's no issues, we'll talk about object-oriented programming later on, where maybe these strategies will all change. Right? But for now, the way we code right now, both ways are fun. Okay? The get accessor. They use the accessor and they make a different variable name. Like they start from the top, like it's yeah. I was wondering why you use that one. It's like a constant. They're going to make it almost like they pull it into the form as a constant, right? Because remember, the capitals usually when they use a capital, it means like it's a constant, it's a private constant that you're going to use, and you can pull the accessor instead of pushing it, like I'm doing. It's just a different way of pulling and pushing the data. At the end of the day, to the outside user. If it's private, it's not accessible. It's not an accessor anymore, right? They're using it in a different method, different way. Okay. So we got the print action. The only thing we haven't done is the about form. Let's do that next. So let's close all these up just to make it easier again for me. Clean up my little area here, house cleaning, and then we'll take a break after this. Again, I want to add Windows form. The about form is actually a built-in form. Right? And it's called About Box 1. I can change this, and I recommend that you do, to something else. For example, About Form. Here it is. Here's my About Form. In order for this to work properly, again, there's a couple things I need to do, right? There is a change that has to happen. So my last form, here's my last form, right? Here's my help, here's my about. In here is where it's going to happen, right? In this About tool strip menu item click. Now, I don't want to instantiate my form every time I click the button. I don't want to do that because that's garbage collection nightmare, right? Yes, you could do that. I probably want to do it up here, right? However, the way we're going to do it is a little different than we did these ones because it's an about form. It's different, okay? Just to let you know. So here, again, we're going to say it's an about form, and you notice we're not putting an access modifier in front of this. About form, and I'm going to put in here my about form is equal to new about form, right? That works fine. If you put a public in front of here or a private, right? Sometimes it'll cause you to have an error. Okay, just be cognizant of that. Although it's public by default. So leave it the way it is. Going down here, again, I've already instantiated it, and now I want to show it as a dialog, right? So I'm going to go my about form. Sorry, it's hard to see. Dot show dialog. Why show dialog? Yes. Modal, right? I want the about form to stop the user from actually doing anything else until he clicks the about form. That's one thing I need to do, right? So let's put in there. So show the about form. Not finished yet, though. And the other thing I need to do for the about form is actually go to the about form itself. So here's the about form, and double click on this OK button. So I got to do something here, right? And on the OK button, I'm going to do something like this dot close. Why? I could hide it too. What's the difference between close and hide when it comes to modal forms? Modal forms are hidden anyway, right? This is fine. So let's say close the form, right? The other thing is I want to do when I make my accessors, or sorry, my about form. Let's close all this up for a second before I test it off. I want to modify my project properties, and I want to go to my assembly information over here and modify some of this stuff. Otherwise, it'll look really ugly. So here is test project. Maybe I want to add in a description. This project demonstrates multi-form applications and with switching between forms. I'm making this up. And passing data. Yep. Okay, test project again. Probably rename that into user-friendly name. I might want to choose this as, instead of assembly version being 1, I could make it 001, right? And if I should probably do this every time I do my GitHub too, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, yes. File version, you might have a different file version because, for example, I might have pulled some stuff on GitHub. So my file version is the previous one from GitHub because I've reverted, right? But my assembly information is, it's the next iteration, my next version, as an example. Okay. Company, Georgian College. I'm filling this in nicely. And I could put a trademark, but I'm not going to, and press OK. OK, save everything. Run my form. Make sure I put a number in there because I haven't got any validation yet. Tom Smith. Next. OK, and about. Right? Works OK. Press OK. Press exit, and we'll take a break. Okay, so right now, what have we done before we go on break? We've created our forms, multi-form applications, goes back and forth. We pass data. We've got all of our functional functions in place. And we've done this all because, and I know we're running short on time today, we're not going to have a chance to do our hands-on assignment for today, but this is really important stuff. It's really important stuff. And some of you have issues, not just here, but in other aspects of your code somewhere else, how to build stuff, and this is why I kind of went over it with you. All right.